Ever since I made this bag using a pre-made canvas tote as a bag liner, I have been completely obsessed with the idea of using canvas bags as bag liners for my projects. So I came across these canvas zipper pouches, pre-made, ready to go. They came in this giant pack with a bunch of different color zippers. I thought these would just be the perfect next experiment when it comes to using pre-made canvas bags. So the original tote bag was pretty big and I could use like a standard size granny square, but since these are a lot smaller, I thought it would be better to try a smaller granny square. You could probably do like maybe 3 big ones if you wanted to. Smaller granny squares is how I'm gonna go this time around. And I picked out some really, really pretty yarn for this. How pretty and summery and bright and fun are these colors? I just totally love them. So I picked up both of these from Joann. This is the label. It's KC hand dyed 100% cotton. This color I know is called Summer Smoothie because this is the tag for it, but this one I lost the tag. I'll put it up on the screen here so you can know what this color is too. But I found this stuff on sale at Joann, and I mean, I just totally fell in love with it. I think it's perfect for this project because it's bright and fun and it's completely not something that I would pick usually, and so that's why I picked it. This, I think, will just be the absolute perfect, like, background color, if you will, or join color, because, well, one, it's almost an exact color match to the canvas here, which is really great. It's sparkly. I don't really know how much the camera is picking that up, but it's sparkly and it's beautiful. But it's a similar weight too. So it's technically a bigger yarn. It's a number 3, whereas my cotton yarns are number 1. I know I normally don't crochet with yarn that thin, but we're stepping out of our comfort zone on this one a little bit. But you know, the thickness is so similar between the two that you can get away with it. So these ones are about 8.5 inches wide and like 5.25 inches tall. And I already know what size granny squares I need because, spoiler alert, I've already worked part of this project. And trust me, it's better this way. There's lots of back and forth that went into figuring out how big the granny squares needed to be. But we've got a plan, and it's a pretty good one. So here's the idea. We'll make 6 granny squares on the width, and we'll stack 3 granny squares high. So we'll have 3 rows of 6 granny squares. Now, if we make the granny squares about 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches each, that means we'll be pretty close. We'll be a little bit bigger, actually, than this bag, but it'll give us a little bit of space here up at the top so that we can add this to the canvas bag in a way that makes it like functional, but also able to take it off and wash it and that sort of thing. So this is what I'm talking about. We have 6 granny squares wide by 3 granny squares tall, and they're just 2 round granny squares. So yeah, this comes together extremely quick. And since the yarn that I'm actually using for this is a super fine and it's really hard for you to see, I'm going to show you how to crochet that first round using a completely different yarn because it'll be easier for you to see. So I like to start my granny squares using the magic ring because I like how it completely closes the center hole. But if you really don't like the magic ring or you can't seem to get the hang of it, don't worry, you can totally start with a chain if that's easier for you. Now I start my magic circle or magic ring with 2 chains. That's the proper height for my double crochets personally. So that acts as a 1 double crochet. We'll make 2 more in the ring. And then we'll chain 2. That is a corner. We'll make 3 more double crochets in the center. 2 more chains, 3 more double crochets, two more chains, so we have 1, 2, 3 out of 4 sides. We'll make 3 more doubles. Kind of running out of room here. Running out of room and yarn. It's 1, 2, 3. Okay. Then we do need 2 more chains at the end to finish that last corner, and then you can just pull your tail there and it draws it up. And see how there's no visible like open hole in the middle? I really like that. That's why I like to use the magic ring, but totally personal preference here. I'll join with the slip stitch there into that top chain. So that's all there is to the first round of the granny square. You'll need 18 of these if you're kind of working within these same size dimensions as I am. And just like that, we have 18 tiny single round granny squares. I think what I want to do is just evenly space some of the squares that look really similar. Like these have a lot of pink on them and they're kind of all over here. So maybe we'll put that one there. We've got a lot of gray over here. I don't know. That looks all right. I'm okay with that. By the way, I didn't mention, if you plan on washing your canvas bag, then you want to do that before you take any of your measurements and make any of your squares, because these do have a tendency to shrink a little bit. Even after you like iron them or steam them afterwards, they do get a little bit smaller. So make sure you're working with a pre-shrunk bag before you put a lot of effort into this. Now I will say I have a full step-by-step in-depth video on Join As You Go. It uses a medium weight yarn that is easier to see on camera. If you're struggling with anything that I'm doing here in these next few steps, I'll link that video below. I would recommend you check that out because it's specifically designed to teach you how to join as you go for the first time. So it's super slow and easy to follow. I'm using this 3mm crochet hook. It works totally fine for this DK weight yarn and for this super fine cotton yarn. One thing I like to do with my granny squares nowadays is flip them after every single round. You won't have too much granny lean with this one because it's only 2 rounds, but you know, I like to keep things consistent. And so I'm flipping these so that the back side is showing, and that's where I will join my yarn here. So the first square in a Join As You Go project, you'll work 3 sides of the square and you almost do so completely normal. But you noticed at the beginning here, we didn't really finish this corner. We just have half of the corner. And so that's important. But we have 2 normal corners. So I just need 3 doubles here. And then on this corner, just put 3 double crochets there. And then we'll kind of jump into the next square. Okay. So not too bad up until this point, right? Like Join As You Go, it really seems very intimidating, but it gets easier the more projects you do. And especially if you're doing small projects like this, you'll be so much better at it than if you started with like a blanket, you know what I mean? Like that takes you a long time and then you forget the things that you learn, you got to go back and relearn them. I don't know, I think this is a perfect project for that. So now chain 2, okay, and we'll grab the next square that I've now totally jumbled and messed up. Yarn over, because we're going to jump right into the next double crochet into any corner that you want. And this one is super fiddly, right? Because you don't really have anything to go off of. You just have that yarn over just kind of hanging there. So work that and make 2 more double crochets because, again, we're just doing part of the corner here. So we just need the 3 doubles. Now it'll look something like this. And the idea is that they will go like this. So to make that happen, what I like to do is fold them like this. So I've got the right side of this one facing down and the right side of this one facing up. And then if you peek behind there, join with the slip stitch in this space. And that will get them attached initially, and then we can go on to 3 double crochets in this corner. And now we're not joining here. Now my previous video, I worked my corners a little bit different. I've been experimenting and trying to make them a little bit better because I just wasn't super duper happy with them. And I think this way is a little bit easier. So we don't have to worry about this first square anymore. We'll just leave it alone. You'll make your 2 corner chains and 3 double crochets in this same space here. And then jump over to the next corner, work it the same as usual. And then on this next corner, just like before, 3 doubles, and then we'll add in the next square. And that's actually the repeat for the first row that you join as you go. So we're going to continue adding all of the squares just in a row, just like that. So remember, when you get to this point, you'll chain 2. This will be part of the corner that will be finished in the end, so we do need to have that there. And then we'll grab our next and then just make a double crochet. Now don't worry if as you're working on it, it kind of looks wonky and weird and messy and it just looks really strange. That's gonna happen with especially this first row here because you're missing an entire side of the granny square. And so it has a tendency to kind of look a little bit weird and off. But once you finish crocheting all the way around, then block it, it looks so much better. I think I'm gonna like this side a lot better than the pink side. I don't know, super cute. So when you get to your 6th granny square, instead of working the 3 sides like you have been, you'll work your side like this, totally normal, where you join here, you have your plain corner there, and then on this one, just work 3 double crochets because we'll start adding the next row along the top here. So from here, go ahead and chain 2. So anytime you're going to add a new square to your project, you pretty much need to chain 2 to get that started. And joining it here is exactly the same. Just double crochet into one of the corners 3 times. And then you just have to think about where it needs to go. Did I do that right? Yeah, I did. See, even I second guess myself sometimes. So it'll go like this, which means we need to join with the slip stitch from here to this spot right here. And then work 3 doubles in this corner. But we will do something different here because we are joining with that first row. So make your 3. And if you get lost at any point, honestly, just unfold it, and it's a lot easier to get your bearings on things and figure out what needs to happen next. From here, we're going to join with a slip stitch to this corner right here. We'll leave this one because we'll come back and join there later on. So for now, join with a slip stitch to this corner. And that's all you have to do for this guy. So now I'm going to leave it just sitting here. We'll chain 1. We'll grab our next square. And then just like before, 3 doubles into any corner you want. Join to that space. And then go right into your 3 doubles on the next corner. And then join with the slip stitch to this corner here. So see, not too bad. That's the repeat for this section. And yeah, that's all we have to do now as we add these squares here initially. But we will come back around and work in these little areas. So if you're looking at it thinking, what on earth are we doing? We'll come back to it. But you know, if you're not in a place where you want to learn a new technique and you don't feel like learning join as you go, I totally get it. You definitely don't have to join as you go for this project or any type of like canvas bag project sort of thing. You can use any join you want. Whatever join you like that you're comfortable with, that you already know how to do, I'd say, I mean, any join will work for this project. If you need a little bit of inspiration on what type of join to use, I do have another video that has 5 of my favorite joins for granny squares that isn't a join as you go, and I have a post as well if you want to read that. I'll have both of those linked in the description below if you want to give those a try. But yeah, any type of join that you're comfortable with, that you already know how to do, you can totally use for this project. So once you've added the 6th granny square here, you're at the corner, you'll join with the slip stitch to this corner. So now what needs to happen is we need to fill in these gaps, right? And we can go ahead and make 3 double crochets in this corner. So we'll finish this one out. And by the way, if you make your granny squares different than I do, by all means, like, make them however you normally do. Especially like with the corners and stuff. Some people put chains between the groups of 3. This is just personal preference. I think these look a little bit neater when I crochet them this way, but the join as you go, you can do with however you normally make your granny squares. So kind of like we did this one, remember we worked a half a corner and a half a corner, but these two were the same. We're basically doing the same thing on this one. We did a half a corner, we're making 2 corners the same. Okay, yeah, so on this corner, make 3 doubles, so just half of the corner, right? Okay, and then chain 1. So now this corner is still free and it needs to be joined. And like I said, I've been playing around with my corners. The previous video shows you a different option for working the corners and join as you go. This is what I've been doing lately and I like the look of it. So we'll release this loop and then insert your hook through the chain space, but then also go under this and then place the loop back on your hook. Pull it through and make a chain. And I think that just looks quite a bit neater than the other way. But any way is totally fine. Whatever looks good to you is what you should do. Now I'll make another chain, and then the repeat begins, sort of. Everything that we did here for this granny square, we pretty much do for this one. And so then it'll kind of look like this. Corners, they look nice and tidy. I don't know, like, there's so many different ways that you can work corners and join as you go, and I'm kind of experimenting with as many of them as I can to see which ones I like best. But this is the one that I like the most so far. So now it looks something like this. We have just one more row to go. We do want to leave this side open, just like here, because we'll crochet around this whole thing when we're done. So we just need to add the third row now, and we do that the same way we added these just a few moments ago. There we are. Join with a slip stitch to that last corner, chain 2, and now we'll fill in the gaps. But I said there was something that we'll do differently. We'll do that on this corner here. Actually, no, it's on this one. So it's going to be the same for this square. You'll work half of your corner here, the remaining corner. You could also go over this if you wanted to. I kind of like the look of it better when it's under. Doesn't really matter as long as you're consistent. Chain 1. Okay, so on this square we will do something different because this is the last row that we're adding, but not quite yet. This corner stays the same. We'll just finish it off with 3 doubles. Normally we've been working this corner just 3 doubles, 2 chains, 3 doubles, right? But now, because it is the last one, we need to join it with this square over here. So I'm going to chain 1, slip stitch, and chain 1, and then jump right into finishing. Whoops. Jump right into finishing this corner. So this is what it looks like when you get that done. Now, of course, we just have this side and this side to finish up. You'll join with this corner. Don't forget to do that. Work this exactly the same. And then when you get to this corner here, you'll work your 3 doubles to finish this corner off. And then all you have to do is slip stitch in this space. So where we have the chain 2 there, just slip stitch and then move right on to the next one. 3 double crochets here. Three double crochets there. Slip stitch. And then this you work the same as we just saw before. You'll make your 3 doubles, and then you'll slip stitch when you have to into those chain spaces. And chain 2 and join with a slip stitch to your second chain there. You could go with 1. See how the slip stitch kind of makes those 2 chains look more like 3? I'm actually going to pull that out and just leave the 1 with the slip stitch. Whoops. So I think that matches the other corners a little bit better. So yeah, that's all there is to the join as you go part. Of course, you'll weave these in. While this looks pretty good as it is, it can really benefit from some blocking. You don't need anything fancy like this. Like, I'm using a blocking board that has a grid on it. And don't get me wrong, the grid is really convenient for stuff like this, where you're trying to keep it straight and even. But you don't have to have a fancy blocking board like this. You can pin it to like a towel on your bed. If your kids have those like foam tile, like alphabet things, those work really well too. Athletic flooring tiles, like anything that you can put a pin in and that you can get wet is totally fine. Normally I am a wet block person, but lately I actually just picked up this steamer that's a lot better than the steamer that I had before, mainly because you can tilt it down and use it. I've been steam blocking with this, and I mean, it's kind of a game changer. It just makes things so much easier and a little bit quicker than wet blocking. I don't know, I really like it. I think for now, we will let this one dry overnight, and then tomorrow we'll tackle the assembly. So fast forward several hours, and we have 2 complete sides to our little bag cover here. And next we need to, you know, attach them, join them together. So there's a couple different ways that we can do this. We can either seam it together with like a whip stitch or something like that, or we can crochet the sides together, the 3 sides. And, you know, I'm really not sure which way I want to go. So I want to experiment with both and see what it looks like. So I think what I want to do, instead of joining in the corner like I normally would, I'm going to leave that because we will crochet like a border around the top. So I think I'm going to start with just the first double crochet. But instead of using both loops, I'm going to catch just the inners because it seems like that will make it a little neater. Now we'll have to see. This is all purely experimental at this point. And I think I'd like to go with a flat seam. So I'm going to use slip stitches. Now just like everything else, you can use any seaming method you want. And honestly, if you had used a different method to join these, like let's say you used the single crochet to join your squares together, you'd probably want to use that same one for your seams maybe, so it looks the same. And for join as you go, technically you can work a continuous like tube kind of thing like we have here, but I kind of just wanted to be a little bit different for this one and have a join on the outer edge because I think it'll give it a nice, I don't know, kind of a different shape maybe. I don't know. I've got an idea in my head and that's kind of what I'm going off of right now. But the moral of the story is you can use any join, any seaming method, whatever you like, whatever looks good to you, whatever's easiest for you, you can do for your bag. So this is what it looks like if we slip stitch using the inner loops only. I kind of like the way that looks. It looks pretty good on both sides. Looks a little bit different on this side. I was kind of expecting that, which is why I was doubting it in the first place, but I do think I like how it looks. And that's kind of what I was going for. I wanted it to be just a little bit different than the rest of the joins, just to see, you know, what that looks like. But I am still curious what a whip stitch would look like. I really don't want to cut this end though. I wonder how lucky I will be to find... Oh my gosh. That seriously never happens. Now what do we think? So this is the whip stitch using the inner loops. I don't know, that looks pretty good. And then this is slip stitch with the inner loops only. Also looks pretty good. Man, they're 2 totally different looks, you know. I do like how it looks braided on this side because, you know, the slip stitch is kind of leaning towards the front side as I was slip stitching. But it does look a little bit different on the back, but still really neat. I still like the way that looks. And then on this side you have something completely different. It's like it's not even there, you know? And I almost feel like if I was going for a seam that looks like it's not even there, it would have made sense to do the join as you go all the way around. So essentially how that would work, if you're curious, you would join your first row of 6 in that first color if you're not like swapping colors around like I am. And then you would just go straight into the next color and the next 6 for the next side. So you have a row of 12 by 3, and then you join at the end, and it works out pretty well. But I think the reason I didn't do that though was because I wanted something a little decorative, a little different, kind of an accent on the edge. And so I think I'm gonna go with the slip stitch. I think I talked myself into it. But if you're on the fence and you're not sure which one you like, now you don't have to experiment. You don't have to try both and see what it looks like, because it should look something like this. Now, as I'm slip stitching this again, like all over again, I did decide to go with a bigger crochet hook because I don't know if you noticed it, but it sort of wanted to pull a little bit. And that's just, you know, because slip stitches, they just have a tendency to be tight, and especially if you're not careful with your tension, like I was just sort of carelessly slip stitching, it wanted to pull a little bit. And one of the easiest ways that you can get around that is just by going up at least a full hook size whenever you're slip stitching. Now, if you're following a pattern, be sure to follow your pattern because you don't want to mess things up. But if you're just winging it and you have to do slip stitches and you notice that your slip stitches are a lot tighter, or they're really hard to work into, or they're just messing up the rest of your design, then try going up a hook size. So I used a 3mm for all of this, and I jumped up to a 4 for this one. And it's working out quite a bit better. Now, yes, I think using the 4mm crochet hook was the right way to go because the stitches are a lot looser and it looks a lot neater. Now, when I got to these sections here, I didn't do anything different or special. I just continued to slip stitch, and same thing around the corners. I actually only made 1 slip stitch and it sort of rounded it out, and I really like that. So this is what it looks like on one side. And then, of course, it looks a little bit different on this side, but still happy with that. I still like this. Now, I don't want to fasten off here because we need to add some kind of border to the top to get it to be attached to our canvas bag here. But let's just see how much we need and if it even fits in the first place. Wouldn't that be funny? There's a few different ways that we can potentially attach this to our canvas bag. One, we could just sew it by hand, and I think that could be an option. But that option means that it's permanent, right? You can't actually take the cover off and wash the inside if you need to, or wash the outside if you need to. Unless you wash the whole thing together, then yeah, that could work. But I think for this one, what I would like to do is have the option to take this off, so that way I can wash them separately if I need to. So what I'm thinking is buttons. I have this collection of buttons that I have been collecting for many, many years. The question though is, do I have enough matching buttons? We might have a good enough option here to use, like, because we have some pink buttons and we have some kind of blue buttons. They're more like teal, but those kind of coordinate with the colors in our bag. So what if we don't have enough buttons of the same color, we could potentially mix and match them. So if we want to use what we have and not order more supplies, these are the options we have, and I'm not in love with any of the options because I kind of wanted them to be the same on both sides, but I don't think that's possible because I just don't think we have enough unless we go with bigger buttons and we only put 3 per side. Then we have enough of these larger pink ones. They are bigger, and so we really wouldn't have much room to add a border, which is fine because that would make the whole process and project go a little bit faster. But Yeah, I think this is the way that I'm gonna go. See what it looks like on this side. It is that time of year where somebody is mowing the grass every single day. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. We'll use the supplies that we have. We'll be good. We won't order more craft supplies. And we'll use these buttons. So yeah, I just left it with this last slip stitch there. I'll go ahead and slip stitch in the corner because then I'm going to continue crocheting along the top. So I'll make a chain, won't count that as a stitch. I'll single crochet in the chain space. And then we have more decisions to make. We can single crochet in the back loop like this. Let me make a few of those stitches. And that will create just a real fine border between the granny squares and the border that we're adding, that exposed loop does. That looks pretty nice. Or we could just use both loops and make the transition a little more seamless, I guess. I'm going to make a single crochet in this chain space and in this one. We'll see if that works. A lot of times I just play around with stuff like this. I think of the two options, I tend to prefer this one. So I'm going to crochet in both loops of the stitch. But whatever you like, definitely go with your gut. But again, play around with this. This isn't like a you have to do it this specific way kind of project. I think what makes this really fun is you can play around with it, you can be creative, you can try new things, you can learn from your mistakes if you need to, and that's the fun of it. Every bag that you make can be unique based on the square that you make, the join that you make, the border that you put on, how you attach it to the bag. Like, you can just get really creative with this. I tell you what though, I cannot get enough of this sparkly yarn. I really don't know how well the camera is picking it up there, but it is so pretty and so sparkly in person. So rather than join, I'm going to continue in a spiral just because it's easier, especially with short stitches like the single crochet. But instead of crocheting in the normal place, I want to try the waistcoat stitch. You'll find, you know, like the front of the stitch and stick your hook right in there, and when you look at it from the back, it kind of pokes out through the middle, and single crochet there. And when you do that, it looks real similar to like a knit stitch. So find the next one, poke it through, and kind of out the middle on the back there. Again, this is just one option. You certainly don't have to do this stitch if you find it to be a little fiddly. It can be, so I definitely get where you're coming from, but I think it'll look really pretty. We'll see. I do find that if I'm really deliberate about how loose I'm making the stitch, it makes life a lot easier, especially on the next round. So the first one, we were just putting our first initial round of single crochets, and now this one is the first round in this new stitch pattern. So if we make these a little bit looser, then it just tends to be a little bit easier to work into, you know. So I ended up with 2 rounds of single crochets there. I think that's about all I can fit. So for now, I think the smart thing to do is to go ahead and add the buttons, and then we can figure out where to make our buttonholes based on that. I think that'll just be a little bit easier. I do have some sewing needles somewhere, but I really don't feel like looking for them. So let's keep this roughly there. Will we? Oh my goodness. That went through so much easier than I thought it was going to. I didn't even have to try. So once I added the first 3 buttons, the other 3 on the back side were much easier. I didn't have to do nearly as much measuring. I kind of just aligned them with the front side, and that gives me an idea of where the buttonholes need to be. When I get to the button, and this is like 1 stitch in from the edge of the button, I'm gonna make 3 chains. I think that will be big enough that you'll be able to get the button through the hole, but not so big that it won't hold on. And then skip 3 stitches and then single crochet in the next. And I'll do that for every single button. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Okay. So yeah, again, test out your tools. I'm trying to measure and see how big these buttons are. These look to be a 3/4 inch button. So if you're using the same yarn, the same hook size, and a 3/4 inch button, 3 chains will do the trick. Let's see if I can just keep crocheting it while that buttonhole is attached. Certainly not making things easy. So let's see what this looks like. Now that we have this first round of buttonholes finished, we have more decisions to make. So now the decision becomes, do we leave it as is, or do we crochet another couple of rounds on top of it? I think there's benefits to both. I really think that it comes down to personal preference, but do we like it like this? You know, part of me really wants to add some more, like maybe 2 or 3 more rounds so it's closer to like where the zipper is showing. But the other part of me just really likes how clean this looks. I don't know, what do you think? I think you can't go wrong either way, but I'm really leaning towards adding another couple of rounds. So I think that's what we're gonna do. Yes, now that is exactly what I'm talking about. I do like the look of it better when it covers the canvas there. I think it looks a little bit more complete. So I'm happy with this. What did we end up doing? So we have our initial round of single crochets. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds total. And remember, one of those rounds is a buttonhole round. But, you know, no worries. You don't feel like you have to follow everything here. If you want to make a bag just like this one, all of the instructions are in the pattern. Too cute. Oh my gosh. I love it when an idea comes together. I probably could block the outer part just a little bit more because it's a teeny bit smaller than my canvas bag, but oh my gosh, it's not even done and I'm so excited. Okay, so we need to finish this off. The best way to do that, I think, when you're using spirals instead of, you know, joining at the end of the round, I'm going to skip this stitch only because I'm working in this, you know, fancy waistcoat stitch and slip stitch to the one over, but the normal stitch placement. So slip stitch there, and that way it sort of blends the jog in with the rest of it. Isn't that like magic? I don't know, that trick just never gets old. I honestly couldn't be more excited about this if I tried. It's so adorable. I'm so proud of this. What a fun little project. I know me holding it up here is really not doing it justice, but what a fun and easy and practical little project this was. If you want to make a bag exactly like this one, check the link below. There's a free pattern on my website. It has all of the information on how you can replicate this bag, the yarn I use, the hook sizes, the instructions for the granny squares, how to do the join as you go, adding the buttons, the border, everything is covered there. And I'm actually working on another version that uses fewer larger granny squares. So if you don't want to work with like a super thin or a fingering weight yarn, I totally get it. It can be kind of fiddly, especially if your hands just aren't up to that. The moral of the story here, or what I want you to take away from this project, is not to follow the pattern step by step, but just to take this idea and run with it, because you can get so creative with a bag like this or just an idea like this. Think of all the different types of canvas bags, shapes and sizes and uses that you can come up with, and add whatever type of square you want to the outside of it. So you're using that canvas, the pre-made canvas liner, as, you know, a liner for your bag. It just makes things so much more practical and easy, and you don't have to hand sew liners and all of that stuff. Now, to give you some ideas, I'm also including a couple of videos and a couple of posts on my website that show different squares that you could potentially use for a project like this, or the full-size canvas tote, which I will have that one linked to if you want to do that one. Some joining methods if you don't want to use the join as you go, or if you do want to use the join as you go, that resource is there. So all of that plus the free pattern is linked in the description below. If you want to support the channel, or you like to have the convenience of having your digital patterns printed and saved to your device, I have that option for you as well. This one is a little bit more robust than our usual digital patterns because there are so many options. Behooked.com is our shop for all of our PDF patterns. We have some digital pattern bundles that I've curated, some fun projects I think that you'll like to work on, but you can also make your own bundles with some pattern discounts for buying multiples. We have some t-shirts if you're into that sort of thing, and we also have some printable cards, bands, and tags that you can add to your gifts. You can provide the care instructions, personalized notes with the cards, and that sort of thing. Thank you so much for the support there. Thank you so much for watching. Happy hooking, and I'll see you in the next one.